There was an idea. Stark knows this. Called the Avengers Initiative. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people. See if they could become something more. See if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dude Seriously Show. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Mike.
Ben. Charles.
And we're talking about the Avengers today. I'm so excited to talk about this. This is a Marvel film that just means so much to so many people. I know this is one that really just brought a lot of people to the Marvel brand. And I'm really excited to hear everybody's stories tonight and just talk about this monumental film for Marvel fans and movie fans alike. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dig in. What were your thoughts on the Avengers?
Well, there was an idea, and the Marvel fan base knows this. To bring together a group of remarkable actors and actresses to play these iconic characters so they could fight the box office battle that DC never could.
Do you rehearse that every night?
No, it's just, that's what it was. They brought it together, and I remember when this first came out, people are saying it's going to be horrible or it's going to be epic. And I think we can all agree it was epic when it came out.
I was looking forward to it ever since, I heard those internet rumors back when Iron Man came out. It really hold it up with Star Wars and just my general excitement for it.
Yeah, and the craziest thing is who would have ever thought before the MCU that you could talk about any film and say it would hold up to Star Wars? Yeah. And while it might not for everybody, I totally get it.
We'd been in a very linear world of movies, and now everybody is intent on universe building. It's not just copycats, but they do a very poor job because they rush it. Marvel was a slow burn to get here. And so for me, the memories of it are that slow burn. How did we get here? And then that sudden excitement was, again, for me to parallel to Star Wars, was as a child realizing when I went to the movies and saw a trailer for Empire. Well, I was 7. I didn't realize there'd be another Star Wars. So when I saw the Empire trailer, I was, wow, I get to see my characters again. So for Avengers, as an adult, to see it all culminating, going, wow, I get to see all these characters together, it did bring back that childhood, excitement.
Up until this point, we've talked about all the individual MCU films, and you guys have been on different episodes, and this is almost like our big culmination episode, bringing people in together. This just tied together all of these movies, and it had never been done before, really. These crossover tie-in movies. And the big difference, too, is that there had been film series before. Star Wars, Star Trek, Terminator, but those are sequels, right? And it's very definitive that yes, these are sequels in a way, but Captain America: The First Avenger is not a sequel to Iron Man 2.
Right.
And there's really, I'm sure you could find some obscure version of something, but the success that these films had, there's nothing like them. And they really set the precedent. But here we are, 2012, the Avengers assemble for the first time on the big screen, and it was crazy. What were your memories like on that day?
We went to see it on IMAX, which, the IMAX, not it's IMAX, but it was an actual IMAX theater. I remember one scene in particular was when Loki and Thor are facing off in the forest. It struck me at that moment because of the size of the screen, the fact that at that moment I had to actually sweep my eyes across it to really engage the entire moment. I thought, I have actually entered into this film. I'm not simply watching it any longer. I'm not simply in a seat in a theater, but now I feel as though I'm immersed in it. That, again, you speak to it, is very hard to do. So in fact, I felt at that moment I was invited into the universe that they were creating. Yeah. It no longer felt linear. I finally was at that moment of going, okay. And of course, we had already been introduced to Iron Man and Cap, and they were about to return and within a handful of seconds and frames from that moment.
As far as storytelling goes, this film came out in May, and my school's prom was at the time. And prom was the day that Avengers came out. And I just love superheroes my whole life. I had to be there. opening day, opening morning. So my sophomore buddies and I went to the theater and we saw it. The first showing, as soon as the theater opened, like 10 o'clock in the morning or something, the earliest I've ever been in a movie theater. So we go and we see it, and we come out and we're like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Can you believe that? Just losing our minds. My mom picked me up from the theater and literally had my rental tux in the back. I changed in the car on the way to the house where all the dates were meeting up. And then we get there, and we're on the bus, and I'm sitting there with my date and all our friends, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, look at your flowers, look at your dress. And I'm sitting there like shaking, like, oh my God, yeah. And then Iron Man shot Cap's shield. And I'm just like, and there's nobody to talk to about it. Everybody was excited to see the film, but they're like, oh, we'll see it tomorrow, or we'll see it over the weekend at some point. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm just losing my mind. And so I get there and I see my math teacher there, who's since become like a really good friend of mine. And he comes over, hands in his pockets, and he goes, what the heck are you doing here? And explained, the whole deal. And he goes, oh yeah, man. He goes, I volunteered to chaperone, but he goes, I kind of wish I didn't because I saw Avengers today and I have nobody to talk to. And I'm like, dude, I saw Avengers today and I have nobody to talk to. And we literally talked for like a solid 45 minutes, just he and I off to the side, while everybody else was off dancing. So,
Including your date.
including my date. So admittedly, like maybe I wasn't the best prom date that year,
But you saw Avengers.
but I saw Avengers.
Hey.
And
Priorities.
I mean, it's a funny story. And I feel like that's like, for my age, like this is our Star Wars premiere, 77, like this just, our grandkids will be like, you saw Avengers in theaters? Oh, that's so cool. There might not even be movie theaters when I have grandkids, but case in point, the real spectacle might be, you were in a movie theater?
Yeah, that's true.
I was still new to the whole Marvel universe when this started. So having to do research and learn about all these characters, but knowing, okay, there is this history here, and there are these previous films, and then seeing all of that finally come together. And I remember going with this huge group opening night. I mean, we literally took up a row, and I can remember grown men and women with Hulk hands and hammers, and Iron Man helmets, just losing their minds. And especially that scene when they finally all assembled and the circular shot goes right. I mean, people were screaming and yelling and applauding. It was magical.
We'd been waiting years for all these people to be together, and it pays off so well.
And we said that during our viewing tonight too,
Right.
is that circle shot comes in. Can you even imagine how cool it is going to be in Infinity War
yeah.
with
Man.
all of these characters, the Guardians, the Avengers, Black Panther, like just these new characters meeting for the first time? It is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
It's hard to even like mentally picture.
I can't put my head around it yet.
With the theme, you
Yeah.
know they're going to do the
Oh
theme.
yeah.
10 years in the making, really. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna happen.
Yeah. It's just gonna be great. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the characters in this film.
Okay.
Especially at the beginning. We're introduced to S.H.I.E.L.D. first. We come in with, there's some chaos going on at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. We meet Maria Hill, we meet Nick Fury, we see Coulson, we meet Hawkeye really in his Avengers garb for the first time. We see Selvig, so a lot of familiar faces. Loki appears, Loki escapes, but all of this goes down and the stakes are already like feeling pretty high. It kind of feels like a James Bond film, but like toned down, but it moves so quick and it feels so good and everything. And then we get Black Widow and just how everything weaves together, bringing the team onto the screen, but they haven't met yet. And everything is just edited so well. It's got to be one of the best edited films, at least this part of it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure.
It's absolutely amazing.
The smooth transitions, especially when Cap says, should have left it in the ocean, and then we go to Iron Man, who's underwater. It's just brilliant. And of course, the Widow's, we talked about it when we were watching it earlier, is that Widow's introduction in this film is probably one of the best scenes in the movie.
Well, and I think what's strong about it too is it's showing S.H.I.E.L.D. doing what they were very good at prior to this introduction of a Tesseract and otherworldly threats. So they were dealing with arms dealers and real world threats that we see in our everyday world.
I really enjoyed the aspect being kind of a newbie to it and knowing other people that didn't know anything about this. They could go into this movie and it gave them enough information starting out that they could go, okay, I can follow along with this. And it was a nice refresher to those that, are the experts. And like we said, the transition, and it seems to build each time a little bit more. It's okay, this is really getting serious. And I just love that. And Coach, you had made the point when we were watching the film, they do a great job putting it in places we're familiar with. Like it's a New York threat that is real life here in the country, in Germany as well. We can relate to that, which I think adds even more to this is a real life threat here.
Yeah, I agree. That's again part of that immersion process.
This film is just so good.
Yeah.
And it holds up, too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it really has.
And a thing I love personally is every character I thought got their moment.
Oh, yeah.
They all got time to shine. And it was distributed nicely, I thought. Seeing Loki manipulate all of them.
Yes.
I thought they did a much better job in this film than Thor, where we talked about, on our Thor review, that to me, he's really not threatening in that movie. I didn't take him seriously. They do an awesome job of saying, okay, this guy's for real now. I mean, right when it starts off, and then you see the scepter, like he's planned all of this out.
Yeah.
And I liked that aspect. It's like, okay, we have a real villain now. I know one of the other things that we had mentioned while watching this is after the battle on the helicarrier, when it's just all gone crazy. And it looks like they're down and out, and Loki's going to succeed, and Hawkeye's never going to turn back. We see Thor in that field, and he's looking at the hammer, and he goes to pick it up and then stops. And we decided it's okay. Am I worthy? Should I even be fighting this battle? Look, this is my brother, and when I've tried to help, all I did was cause chaos. I mean, they even flat out said, we've done all this at S.H.I.E.L.D. because of you. And I just thought that was a real important moment for his character. at least.
Absolutely. For Thor, he sees himself as a protector of worlds, and Coulson dies right before him. Am I worthy if I cannot stop Loki from killing one man? Well, how can I protect a whole world? Am I worthy of carrying that hammer? Those are beautiful moments when they don't have to be spoken, when the visual does tell you the story, the picture worth 1,000 words, or in this case, a frame. We already see the disintegration of the relationship between Iron Man and Cap. The fact that we see Hawkeye and Widow fight, and she really does care for him, but has to defend herself. But I think there's a lot that is symbolic in that as well, that you have to restrain yourself even on the offensive.
And there's history between them that it gets identified, so they know
Yeah.
it's even more difficult for her, but she knows she has to do it. And I think her scene with Loki was awesome, because it shows just how good she is and what she does.
Absolutely.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
The manipulator against the manipulator.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, the greatest manipulator of all seems to be our one-eyed friend. He is manipulating all of these people to do what he wants to do, right to the point of Coulson's cards, right?
Yeah.
Fury throws the cards down, and we find out that those weren't on him; they were in the locker.
Right.
But he splatters some blood on
Gotta
them.
do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
It really does bring up an interesting ethical conversation to these films because, Loki is using manipulation for personal gain. Widow is using it for the betterment of the team. And Fury is using it for the betterment of the world, but at the
Right.
cost of his friends.
Absolutely.
That's what this film comes down to, is it's foundational for what comes after it, but it's cumulative of everything that comes before it. And it's just this perfect blend, and it just comes together so well. There are a couple points that we can nitpick, like we talked about when Thor was in that case that they built for Hulk, and he hits the hammer against it and it doesn't break. And then, of course, you and I talked about the device that Thor and Loki put the Tesseract in to turn, and it takes them back to Asgard. Where did that come from? I think the case in point is, and it's not even being a fanboy, it's that this film is so good in so many other aspects that we've seen this movie a million times, and only now are those things starting to bother
You just
us.
overlook it, really.
Yeah. I think if you can have a film that is so fun and so immersive that you don't even notice some of these problems because there's so much, not because everything else that's going on is distracting from it, but it's because it's so enthralling and rich. That's where a lot of other movies tend to fall apart.
Yeah. Another thing I love about this is we kind of touched on earlier, it kind of foreshadows the films to come. You see Hulk and Thor going at it, and then they're teaming up later, fighting the Chitauri, and then you see Cap and Tony going at it, but they also have to come together.
Struggling to get along. And,
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But in Joss Whedon's style, it is self-contained. Because Joss hates a film that creates a sequel and doesn't have its own end, which is why he's critical of Empire Strikes Back. So
This film is,
but it does. It wraps itself up effectively that it can just be its own film. You don't have to know anything from its past. You don't actually have to be an expert. You don't have to have even watched the prior films to be able to instantly be engaged. And at the end of the film go, hey, it's all wrapped up. Loki's captured, the team is built, ta-da, done.
Anybody can watch it and enjoy it.
Another fun Whedonism, if you will, is the fact that we had to have a beloved character who got the axe. And, of course, it makes sense that it would be Phil Coulson.
You mean the point of the blade in this instance.
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
It makes sense that it would be Phil Coulson because at this point, there's no Phil Coulson in the comic books. He's just a character that was created for the movies that everybody just found endearing and came to love. And but because he's not one of the main characters, he was expendable. That's who they're avenging and why they become the Avengers.
He's been in all these movies. Like he was kind of the glue that connected all of it, held it together.
He's the everyman because he's approachable because he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just.
And you pulled for him. I mean, you wanted him to do well, and he's trying to help, and he's gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember the theater just about to cry, really, a lot of them, when it happened.
As predictable as it was that we lost Phil Collins,
Phil Collins?
Coulson.
There you go.
There it is. Yeah,
There we
Coulson.
go.
As predictable as it was, every time I watch it, I still am surprised when it happens. When he's gone and when he's killed, and it's just there's just something about that moment. It's surprising and shocking, even though you could see it coming a mile away.
Yeah.
It's a Genesis moment, if you will.
This guy.
I would say, but it's really.
Spoken like the skilled drummer that you are, sir.
Wow.
So there we go.
Thank you.
Oh, boy.
All right.
Slowly,
I can
Let's-
feel the love tonight.
Isn't that Elton
Oh
John?
my God.
Please leave that.
Oh, my goodness.
Awesome.
No, I'll take that out.
Yeah.
And maybe the craziest moment of everything is that post-credit scene with Thanos. We see the character that Loki interacts with, so that's our familiar face. And then we see him turn and look over his shoulder. And I remember my pals and I, when we saw it in the theaters, everybody was like, oh, who is that guy? We know who he is. And then we looked it up, and it's like, oh, okay, we're getting towards something here.
Well, here
It's
we are
great.
6 years later, and we're just now getting our payoff, but we don't feel starved. If you don't have this quality, slow burn to this moment, and we rush to it, which many other film franchises do, or books for that matter, or many other things in our life, episodic television, they deviate and find themselves lost. This has been so intentional, but so well done for the most part. They've had a couple of, missteps, but overall, to get us to this place that was set 6 years ago and had so many questions. I mean, how many people, as you said, left the theater going, "Who is Thanos?" And now everybody's educated. We're all up to speed with who Thanos is. So now we're going to see him in all his power.
Every time we have you on the show, we've got to get the Stan Lee impression, so.
Superheroes in New York. Give me a break. Well, what's funny is the original scene, I'm sure you guys know this, was him.
At the restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Cap and the waitress, and she's throwing herself at him, and it's so obvious, and he's oblivious to it, and Stan Lee just basically says, "Get a number, you moron." I mean, and I like that one. That was my favorite. I think they should
I prefer
use
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's fun to hear him say the superhero in New York. I mean, he's the man who created superheroes, and they were all pretty much home based in New York.
Yep.
I mean, your Daredevils, your Spider-Man. I mean, Avengers. Everybody's parked in New York, so it's
The city
great
they
to-
love to destroy.
That's right.
God forbid there's any crime in, like, you know, Kansas.
Oh gosh, yeah, forget that.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to bring this episode to a close, guys. This has been awesome talking about the Avengers. It's been as fun as it has been nostalgic. And this is Avengers 1. We're about to start Phase 2. We'll get to Age of Ultron. Then the next Avengers film after that is Infinity War.
The Mac Daddy.
The big one.
Yes.
We're getting there. So guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. This has been an awesome time on the Dude Seriously show. It's the culmination of the Marvel Cinematic Universe up till this point. And join us next week. We're going to dive into Marvel's Phase 2 with Iron Man 3. We'll see you on the next show, guys. Dude Seriously.